When you start waking up, the first thing you notice is that the world no longer feels random. What once looked like chance now carries meaning. You think of a friend, and the phone rings. You open a book, and the exact sentence you needed appears. At first, you wonder if you're just seeing patterns, but after a while, it feels like the whole universe is arranging itself, gently nudging you toward what you need to see. This is what many people call synchronicity. To the ordinary mind, it's just coincidence. To the awakened, it is as though reality has become a language, not made of words, but of signs and patterns. You begin to realize the universe doesn't communicate through sermons or commandments. It speaks softly through timing, through alignment, through the strange dance of events falling into place. And the more you pay attention, the clearer this language becomes. It feels almost as if life itself is having a conversation with you. This isn't about fortune telling. It's not that you suddenly know what will happen tomorrow. Rather, you begin to feel connected to something larger than your own thought. You notice that when you stop forcing, when you stop grasping, life flows in a way that feels almost magical. Opportunities appear. People arrive in your path. Problems untangle themselves in ways you could never have planned. It's as if reality rewards you not for control, but for trust. And then something stranger happens. You start to notice paradoxes, truths that seem to contradict each other, yet both feel real. For instance, you realize you are both the smallest speck of dust in this vast cosmos, and at the same time, you are the entire cosmos experiencing itself as you. You realize that letting go gives you more control than clinging ever did. That in losing yourself, you find yourself. To the ordinary mind, paradox is confusion. But to the awakened mind, paradox is a doorway. Think of it like music. A single note means nothing. But the harmony, the tension and release, the way opposites balance each other, that is where the beauty lies. Spiritual awakening gives you ears for that music. You begin to see that life is not meant to be ironed flat into certainty. It is meant to be lived in the play of opposites, joy and sorrow, gain and loss, chaos and order. Instead of fighting one side or clinging to the other, you start to embrace the dance. Another sign of awakening is how your dreams change. Once, they were just random fragments of your mind. Now, they feel alive, like they are speaking directly to you. You wake up with a sense that the dream was not just a story, but a message. Sometimes it's clear, sometimes it lingers like a symbol you cannot quite decipher, but you know it matters. It feels as though the boundary between your waking life and your dream life has grown thin. The two start to reflect each other, weaving a pattern that cannot be ignored. At this point, many people fear they are losing their mind. After all, society tells us that dreams are meaningless. Coincidences are accidents. Paradoxes are errors. But what is really happening is not madness, but expansion. You are beginning to see more of reality than before. You are not losing touch with life, you are touching it more deeply. And once you see this, you cannot return to the old way of being, because it would feel like shrinking back into a shell that no longer fits. Something else begins to shift too. The sense of being a separate, isolated self starts to dissolve. You feel, even if just for a moment, that the boundary between you and the rest of the world is not so solid after all. You notice how your breath is borrowed from the trees, how your food is borrowed from the earth, how your very thoughts are shaped by language you did not invent. And in this realization, a deep humility and a deep peace emerge. You are not separate. You are a wave of the same ocean. And yet, this realization does not erase individuality. In fact, it makes individuality shine more brightly. You begin to see that being part of the whole does not mean being erased. It means playing your note fully in the symphony of life. Your uniqueness is not a burden. It is your contribution to the great unfolding. So instead of pretending to be someone else, you begin to relax into who you truly are. You stop needing approval. You stop needing to perform. Life lived authentically is life lived beautifully. Life itself begins to feel mythological. You start to see your experiences, your challenges, even your struggles as part of a greater story. The characters you meet are teachers in disguise. The difficulties are trials meant to grow you. The blessings are not random, but gifts. Every day feels less like meaningless repetition and more like chapters in a living tale. Not because you are inventing it, but because you are awakening to the fact that life has always been this way. It has always been more than just survival. It has always been a great adventure in consciousness. When you begin to live this way, you notice how little control you actually need. Life is no longer a chessboard where you must calculate every move. It becomes more like a river. You learn to swim with the current instead of exhausting yourself against it. And when you do, you realize the river was never against you. The flow was always carrying you forward. It was only your clinging that made it feel like drowning. This is why awakened people often appear calm even in storms. It is not that nothing ever goes wrong for them. It is that they no longer see life as a series of interruptions to their plans. They see life itself as the plan. The accident, the delay, the unexpected turn, all of it belongs. And because it belongs, it no longer feels like an enemy. They may still feel grief or anger or loss, but underneath it runs a quiet trust, a sense that even this, too, has its place in the great unfolding. At this stage, something else begins to change, your relationship with time. Before, life was always rushing forward, tomorrow was more important than today, and yesterday was a heavy chain. But when you awaken, the present moment expands. You realize the past only exists as memory, the future only as imagination. The only place life ever actually happens is here and now. And when you rest in this moment, it becomes vast, luminous, enough. Time doesn't vanish, but it loses its tyranny. You are no longer enslaved by what if. You are free to live. This freedom from time changes everything. Small details become radiant. The way sunlight filters through the leaves, the sound of laughter in the distance, the simple act of breathing. Things you once overlooked become treasures. Because you are no longer racing toward a finish line, you can finally taste the richness of the step you are on. And in that richness, you discover that happiness is not something you chase. It is something you notice. It was here all along, waiting for your attention. You may also begin to notice how other people respond differently to you. Some will feel drawn, almost magnetized, by the ease you carry. Others may feel threatened because your presence quietly reveals the tension in their own. And that is all right. Awakening is not about convincing others. It is about being fully yourself and letting that authenticity ripple outward. Some will understand, some will not. But the beauty is, you no longer need them to. As you walk this path, another realization dawns that suffering is not the enemy. All your life, you may have run from pain, tried to bury it, tried to numb it. But now, you see that pain itself can be a teacher. Like fire that purifies metal, suffering burns away illusions. It strips off the masks. It shows you where you cling, where you resist, where you still fear. And once you stop fighting it, pain becomes less like punishment and more like initiation. It is the way life carves space inside you for deeper joy. Think of the cracks in clay that let the light through, or the pruning of a tree that allows it to grow stronger. Your struggles are not proof of failure. They are proof of transformation. And as you awaken, you begin to see that even the darkest nights are part of the journey. The dawn is not separate from the night. It grows out of it. And so does wisdom grow out of sorrow, strength out of vulnerability, peace out of chaos. Another thing you experience is a shift in how you relate to desire. Before awakening, Desire feels endless, one thing after another, always reaching, always hungry. But once you awaken, desire softens. It doesn't vanish, but it becomes lighter. You still enjoy life, beauty, love, creativity, but you no longer cling as though your existence depends on it. You can enjoy without owning. You can love without controlling. You can create without needing applause. Desire stops being a chain and becomes instead a dance. And then comes perhaps the most liberating experience of all. You begin to laugh at yourself, not in cruelty, but in lightness. You see how seriously you once took everything, your worries, your status, your plans, and you laugh because you realize none of it was ever as heavy as it seemed. This laughter is not dismissive. It is freeing. It is the recognition that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. And in that laughter, you feel more alive than ever. By now, the world feels different, though nothing has changed outwardly. The streets are the same, the people are the same, the sky is the same. But your perception has shifted. You see the connectedness, the patterns, the hidden music. You understand that you are both actor and audience in this play of existence, and you no longer need to grip so tightly. You can let the play unfold moment by moment, knowing that every scene has its place. That is the essence of awakening, to live fully, to love freely, to see clearly without fear. When you live like this, something remarkable happens. You no longer feel like a stranger in the universe. You feel at home. The trees, the rivers, the people, even the chaos of the city, all of it feels like part of one great dance. You don't stand outside of it, trying to control. You are inside it, moving with it, as natural as a wave belongs to the ocean. And with this sense of belonging comes a deep rest, a rest not found in sleep, but in knowing you are exactly where you are meant to be. This rest is not laziness, it is aliveness. It frees you from the restless search to prove yourself. You don't need to impress, you don't need to fight, you don't need to always be on guard. Instead, you find yourself acting more spontaneously, more joyfully. Life becomes less about performance, more about participation. You say yes to the present moment, and in that yes, you discover freedom. And here's the secret. When you stop grasping so tightly, life begins to offer you exactly what you need, often in ways you could never have planned. Many people ask, what is the purpose of life? And yet, perhaps the better question is, what is the purpose of a song? You don't play music to get to the end of it. You play it for the joy of the notes, one by one. You don't dance to arrive at the final step. You dance to move, to feel, to be alive in the rhythm. Life is the same. Its meaning is not hidden in some distant goal. Its meaning is here, in the living, in the breathing, in the wonder of simply being. And when this realization truly lands, seriousness begins to dissolve. Not responsibility, not care, but the heavy seriousness that once made life a burden. You see the comedy of it all, the divine play. You see people chasing status, chasing approval, chasing tomorrow, and instead of judging, you smile, because you remember you did the same. And maybe your smile, your presence, will be a small invitation for them too, to loosen their grip, to laugh, to see that the game is not as heavy as it seems. So here we are. Things only spiritually awakened people experience are not strange powers or distant visions. They are the simplest things, seeing life as a dance instead of a problem, noticing the beauty of the present moment, laughing at your own seriousness, and resting in the flow of what is. It is not about escaping the world, but about seeing it clearly. Not about becoming someone else, but remembering who you already are. And once you see this, once you awaken even a little, you cannot go back. The masks fall away, and life reveals itself not as a task, but as a miracle.
The universe has been playing an extraordinary game with itself for billions of years. This game is called death and rebirth. It's happening in every moment, with every breath, with every thought that arises and dissolves. And yet, we've convinced ourselves that we're somehow exempt from this cosmic dance. We believe we should be permanent in a world where nothing else is. What a curious predicament we've created. In the next little while, I'd like to explore with you this most fundamental aspect of existence, seen not as something morbid or frightening, but as the very secret to living fully. For when we truly understand death, we finally understand life. In our Western world, we've created the most extraordinary situation. We've made death into something unspeakable. We don't talk about it at dinner parties. We shield our children from it. We've even created an entire industry dedicated to making corpses look as if they're merely sleeping. Isn't that fascinating? You see, this avoidance isn't accidental. It stems from a fundamental misunderstanding about what we are. We've convinced ourselves that we are permanent entities, separate from the world, desperately trying to maintain our existence against all odds. And from this misunderstanding springs our terror. But what if I told you that this very attempt to avoid thinking about death is precisely what makes it so frightening? It's rather like trying not to think about a pink elephant. The harder you try, the more it dominates your thoughts. Our culture's desperate attempt to ignore death has paradoxically made it into a monster lurking in our subconscious. Consider for a moment the extraordinary paradox we've created. The one experience that every single human being will have, without exception, has become the experience we refuse to contemplate. We prepare for everything else, education, career, family, retirement, but not for the one certainty in life. How very odd. What if I told you that the fear of death arises primarily from a case of mistaken identity? You see, we have been taught to believe that we are isolated entities, separate from the universe. But this separation is an illusion. As I often say, you and I are as much continuous with the universe as a wave is continuous with the ocean. Have you ever seen a wave that was separate from the ocean? Of course not. The wave is a pattern of behavior that the ocean is doing. Similarly, you are something the whole universe is doing, in the same way that a wave is something that the whole ocean is doing. The fear of death comes from identifying yourself with the wave rather than with the water. If you think, I am this particular pattern that must be preserved at all costs, then naturally you will fear the moment when that pattern dissolves. But if you realize that you are the water, taking on countless forms, rising and falling in an eternal dance, where is the fear? Consider this curious fact. You cannot experience your own absence. Try it. Can you imagine what it's like to not exist? You can't, because there would be no you to have the experience. What we fear is not non-existence, but the idea of iten, idea that makes no sense, since non-existence cannot be experienced. The cosmic joke is that we've convinced ourselves we're separate from nature, when in fact we are nature. We are the universe experiencing itself. And from this perspective, death is not an end, but a transformation, like a wave returning to the ocean. Look at the world around you. Do you see anything permanent? The seasons change, mountains slowly erode, stars are born and die. Everything is in flux. And yet, we somehow expect ourselves to be the exception to this universal pattern. Death is not an aberration in nature, it's essential to the rhythm of life. Without death, there could be no birth. Without autumn and winter, there could be no spring. The fallen leaves decay to nourish new growth. Your own body is completely renewed every 7 years or so. The person you were physically a decade ago has entirely vanished. As I've often pointed out, without birth and death, and without the perpetual transmutation of all forms of life, the world would be static, rhythmless, undancing, mummified. Would you really want to live in such a world? The universe doesn't create and then destroy. Creation and destruction are two aspects of the same process, like the front and back of your hand. You cannot have one without the other. Life and death are not enemies, but partners in an eternal dance. So you see, death is not a mistake to be corrected or an enemy to be defeated. It is as natural and necessary as the night following day. The real question isn't how to avoid death, but how to relate to it in a way that enriches life rather than diminishes it. We are so caught up in the illusion of time, aren't we? Past, present, future, these neat little compartments we've created to make sense of our experience. But have you ever noticed that you never actually experience the past or the future? You only ever experience now. The past exists only as memory, the future only as anticipation, and both of these happen in the present moment. This moment right now, as you're listening to my voice, is all there ever really is. And yet we spend most of our lives mentally absent from it, lost in regrets about yesterday or anxieties about tomorrow. Death appears frightening when we think of it as something that will happen later in a future we imagine. But the future never arrives. When death comes, it will be now the same now in which you've always lived. There is nowhere else for it to happen. Consider this fascinating perspective. Just as space is what separates objects from one another, time is what separates events. But these separations are conventions, useful fictions. In reality, all space and all time are aspects of a unified whole. Death is not an event that waits for you at the end of a long road. It's an aspect of the eternal present, just as birth is. So you see, when we step outside the linear view of time, death is not an ending but a transition within the eternal now. It's like turning a corner on a path. The path continues, just in a direction you couldn't see before. Do you know why children love to play hide and seek? There's something delicious about pretending not to know where someone is and then experiencing the joy of rediscovery. In a way, this game mirrors something profound about existence itself. The universe, you see, is playing an elaborate game of hide and seek with itself. In Sanskrit, they call it Leela, divine play. We are the universe hiding from itself, forgetting its true nature so that it can have the delight of remembering again. Through the development of the egotist sense of being a separate self, we've hidden our fundamental connection to everything. We've drawn boundaries around ourselves and said, this is me and that is not me. And then we've forgotten that we made up these boundaries in the first place. Death is the ultimate revealing in this cosmic game of hide and seek. It's the moment when the pretense falls away, the boundaries dissolve, and what you've always been, the entire cosmos, is revealed once more. Not as an intellectual concept, but as lived reality. There's a profound liberation in no longer having to pretend that you're just this limited, separate entity struggling against the universe. In death, the game is up, and what could be more freeing than that? The fear comes only from forgetting that it's a game we chose to play. Eastern traditions have long understood what we in the West struggle to accept. Impermanence is not a flaw in the system, but its very essence. The Japanese have a concept called mono no aware, the pathos of things which recognizes that the transience of life is precisely what gives it beauty. Think of cherry blossoms. Would they be as cherished if they bloomed all year round? No, it's their brief, exquisite appearance and quick falling that makes them so precious. Their impermanence doesn't diminish their beauty, it constitutes it. Similarly, the Buddhist tradition teaches us not to grasp or cling to passing phenomena. As the Diamond Sutra puts it, we should view all things as a phantom, a dewdrop, a bubble in a stream. Not to devalue them, but to appreciate their true nature. When we resist impermanence, when we try to freeze time or deny death, we create suffering for ourselves. It's like trying to hold on to a handful of water by squeezing it tightly. The tighter we grip, the more quickly it slips away. But when we learn to open our hands, to appreciate without clinging, something remarkable happens. We discover a deeper beauty in life's passing nature. We find ourselves fully present in each moment, neither rushing toward the future nor clinging to the past. And in that presence we taste eternity. Isn't it interesting that the one reality that makes life most precious is the very one we refuse to face? Death is life's greatest deadline, and without deadlines, we procrastinate. Without death, life would lose its poignancy, its urgency, its sweetness. I've often suggested to my students a simple thought experiment. Imagine you had eternal life. What would you do today? Tomorrow? Next year? Would you feel any need to read that book you've been putting off, to reconcile with that friend, to tell someone you love them? Probably not. After all, you could always do it latter infinitely later. Now, imagine you knew with certainty that you had exactly 1 year to live. How would your priorities shift? What would suddenly become important? What would you let go of? This awareness of finitude focuses the mind wonderfully, doesn't it? Death, you see, is not the opposite of life, it is the backdrop against which life becomes visible. Like stars that can only be seen against the darkness of night, the beauty and meaning of our existence shine forth precisely because they are temporary. So the paradox is this: by accepting death as an integral part of life, we don't diminish life, we enhance it. We bring a new quality of awareness to each moment. We stop postponing joy. We cease living as if we had all the time in the world, and instead live as if each day might be our last, because one day we will be right. Many people fear death because they imagine it as a state of nothingness, a void in eternal darkness. But let's examine this fear more closely. What exactly is nothing, and is it really possible to experience it? You see, we have this curious idea that after death we will somehow be trapped in a dark void, aware of our own non-existence. But that's a contradiction, isn't it? To experience nothingness would require someone to have the experience. And if someone is having an experience, it isn't nothingness at all. As I often point out, when you die, you're not going to have to put up with everlasting non-existence, because that's not an experience. You cannot be aware of being unconscious for the same reason you cannot bite your own teeth. What's more, we all come from what others might call nothing. Before you were born, where were you? What was it like to not exist? You can't remember, because there was no you to have the experience. And yet, here you are, emerged from that very nothingness. Perhaps what we call nothing is actually the source of everything, not an empty void, but an infinite potentiality. Not the absence of existence, but existence in its unmanifested form. After all, the universe itself emerged from what physicists might call a quantum vacuum, not empty space, but a plenum of possibility. There's a beautiful concept in many spiritual traditions that death is not an end but a return, a homecoming. And science, in its own way, confirms this profound intuition. Consider the physical matter that makes up your body. Every atom in you was forged in the heart of a star that exploded billions of years ago. As the poet says, we are quite literally stardust. And when we die, those atoms don't disappear, they simply change form, returning to the great cycle of nature. The carbon in your bones may become part of a tree, which bears fruit eaten by a bird which sings songs that delight a child. The water in your cells will evaporate, join the clouds, fall as rain, flow to the ocean. Nothing is lost. Everything is transformed. And what of consciousness, that mysterious quality that seems to animate matter? Perhaps it too is not created or destroyed, but merely changes form. Like a wave that returns to the ocean, perhaps our individual awareness returns to a universal consciousness from which it temporarily emerged. So you see, death need not be viewed as annihilation, but as reintegration. Not as an exit from existence, but as a return to our source like a river flowing back to the sea. We came from the universe, we return to the universe, and in truth we never left it at all. We've been home all along. If death is inevitable, and it most certainly is, then perhaps the question isn't how to avoid it, but how to approach it with grace, curiosity, and even a touch of artistic flair. Just as there is an art to living well, there is an art to dying well. The first principle of this art is presence. Death, like birth, is one of life's great transitions, worthy of our full attention. Yet our culture encourages us to be absent from it or numb ourselves with distractions or medications, to pretend it isn't happening. What if, instead, we chose to be fully present with the mystery of our own passing? The second principle is acceptance. Not a grim resignation, but the kind of acceptance that comes from deep understanding. When we truly see that death is not an enemy but a natural completion of life's cycle, resistance melts away. In its place comes a profound peace. The third principle is curiosity. What lies beyond this life? No one can say with certainty. But rather than filling that unknown with fearful projections, we can approach it with the wide-eyed wonder of a child. Death may well be the greatest adventure of our journey into the ultimate unknown. Throughout history, those who have approached death with awareness have often reported not terror but awe. Not contraction, but expansion. Not an end, but a threshold. Perhaps they glimpsed what the mystics have always intuited, that what we call death is but a doorway to a greater life. As we come to the end of our exploration together, I invite you to consider this. Everything passes. The good and the bad, pleasure and pain, success and failure, all of it is transient, flowing like a river that never steps in the same place twice. This passing nature of all things is not a tragedy to be lamented, but a truth to be embraced. For in accepting the impermanence of life, we discover a profound freedom. We no longer need to grasp so tightly, to control so desperately, to fear so deeply. We can hold life lightly, appreciatively, joyfully, knowing that its very transience is what makes it precious. Death is not waiting for us at the end of a long road. It is here with us from the beginning, the inseparable twin of life, dancing in perfect harmony. And when we befriend death, when we integrate it into our awareness instead of pushing it away, something remarkable happens. We become more alive. So I leave you with this thought. Don't postpone your living until some future moment when all conditions seem perfect. Don't wait to be fully alive. This moment, with all its beauty and imperfection, its joy and sorrow, its absolute transience, this moment is your life. And it is enough. For what we are seeking is not immortality, but eternity. Not endless time, but the transcendence of time. And that eternity, that timeless now, is available to us in every moment if only we have eyes to see and hearts to receive it. Have you ever considered that what you call the world might not be at all what you think it is? That this seemingly solid reality you navigate daily is actually something quite different from what your senses report? I'd like to invite you on a journey today, not outward into some distant realm, but inward into the very nature of perception itself. For you see, the most fascinating discovery one can make is that the world you've been taught exists out there isn't outside at all. It's within you. And this isn't merely some poetic metaphor, but rather a profound truth about the nature of consciousness that Eastern philosophy has recognized for thousands of years. From the moment we develop self-awareness as children, we are taught a peculiar idea. We are told that we are separate entities, isolated individuals, moving through a world that exists independently of us. Here I am, we're taught to think, and there is the world. What a curious notion. But I want to suggest something rather revolutionary. What if this fundamental assumption, this bedrock of our Western thinking, is entirely backward? You see, when you examine your actual experience, what you've been told about it, but your direct moment-to-moment living, you might notice something quite extraordinary. You never actually experience a world out there. You only ever experience your perception. Consider this: when you look at, say, a tree, you don't actually experience the tree as it exists independently. You experience a complex interaction between light waves, your retina, your optic nerve, and ultimately your brain. The tree, as you know it, exists in your consciousness. Without you, without a perceiver, what would this tree be? Can you even conceive of it? This isn't to say nothing exists outside your perception. Rather, it's to recognize that what you call the world is inseparable from the consciousness experiencing it. Like a wave cannot exist without the ocean, your experience cannot be separated from you, the experiencer. The ancient Upanishads express this beautifully: that thou art. You are not in the world is in you. We've been taught that our eyes are like cameras, passively recording the world. But this is a most misleading metaphor. Your eyes don't simply take pictures of a pre-existing reality, they participate in creating what you see. Did you know that your eyes are actually outgrowths of your brain? They're not separate instruments that feed information to your mind, they are your mind reaching out into space. And this is tremendously significant. Consider how a frog sees the world. A frog's eyes are specifically designed to detect small, moving objects' potential food while largely ignoring stationary ones. The frog doesn't decide to see this way. Its very perception is structured to reveal what matters to being a frog. And you, my friend, are no different in principle. Your perception is not passive, but actively engaged in selecting and organizing the information that matters to being human. Your eyes don't just see, they seek. They question. They interpret. This is why 10 people can witness the same event and come away with 10 different experiences. We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. Your perceptions are deeply personal creations, painted with the brushes of your expectations, your past experiences, your cultural conditioning, your very biology. So when you look out at what you call the world, remember, you're not seeing something separate from yourself. You're seeing your own mind in action, reaching out to embrace and create what matters to you. The eyes that see are not windows, but creators. Now, let's go deeper into this fascinating territory. Behind your senses lies your mind, and your mind is not simply a blank slate upon which experience writes. It's more like a projector, casting patterns of meaning onto the raw material of sensation. You see, before you even open your eyes in the morning, you already have ideas about what the world is and how it works. You have concepts, categories, assumptions, a whole framework of understanding that you've absorbed from your culture, your education, your personal history. And this framework doesn't just influence how you interpret what you perceive, it shapes what you perceive in the first place. The Zen Buddhists understand this profoundly. There's a wonderful Zen saying, if you want to know what the water is like, don't ask the fish. Why? Because the fish is so immersed in water that it has no concept of wetness. Water is not one thing among many in the fish's world. It is the very medium of its existence, too close to be seen. And so it is with your conceptual frameworks. They're not just tools you use to understand the world. They are the very medium through which you experience it. You don't see and then interpret. The interpretation is built into the seeing itself. This is why meditation can be so revolutionary. In deep meditation, when the conceptual mind grows quiet, you may suddenly perceive the world with fresh eyes as if seeing for the first time. Colors more vivid, sounds more clear, everything suffused with a strange and wonderful immediacy. This is not an altered state's perception before the mind divides everything into familiar categories. It's the world as it is, not as you think it should be. Have you ever considered the rather extraordinary fact that the universe you experience exists entirely within your consciousness? I don't mean this in some abstract theoretical sense. I mean it quite literally. Think about it. The stars you see at night, where do you experience them? Not millions of light years away, but right here, within your awareness. The distant mountain range, the song of birds, the face of a loved one, all of these exist for you only as experiences within your consciousness. This is not to deny the existence of things outside your personal awareness. It's simply to recognize that your universe, the only one you ever know, directly is a universe of experience. And experience always happens in here, not out there. The Hindu tradition expresses this beautifully in the concept of Leela, the divine play. In this view, the entire cosmos is understood as the dream or play of consciousness itself. Not your personal consciousness alone, mind you, but consciousness as the fundamental ground of all being. Now, Western science has come to a similar insight, though through a very different route. Your brain constructs your experience of reality from mere whispers of energy photons hitting your retina, air pressure waves vibrating your eardrums. From these minimal inputs, your nervous system fabricates the rich, colorful, meaningful world you inhabit. Colors, for instance, don't exist out there. There are only electromagnetic waves of different frequencies. The redness of a rose is not in the rosates in you. The sweetness of honey is not in the honey, it's in you. The beauty of music is not in the vibrating air, it's in you. So you see, the cosmos isn't something alien that surrounds you. It's something intimate that arises within you. You are not in the universe. The universe is in you. One of my favorite ways of understanding this peculiar situation we find ourselves in is to see it as a cosmic game of hide and seek, a game that consciousness plays with itself. Think of it this way. Imagine that there is only consciousness, only awareness. But consciousness, by its very nature, must be conscious of something. So, what does it do? It creates the appearance of otherness, of objects, of a world. It divides itself into subject and object, into me and not me. And then here's the marvelous joke: it pretends to forget that it has done this. It pretends that the world is something separate from itself, something to be feared or desired, avoided or pursued. It hides from itself only to have the pleasure of seeking and eventually finding itself again. This is the essence of what the Hindus call Maya, not simply illusion, as it's often mistranslated, but the creative power that brings forth the appearance of multiplicity from unity. The power that allows the one to appear as many. And we play this game with such conviction. We really believe that we are separate selves in a foreign world. We forget that this separation is something we've fabricated. As the Upanishads put it, he who sees multiplicity wanders on from death to death. But occasionally, perhaps in moments of great beauty, or deep love, or profound meditation, the boundaries dissolve. The game is temporarily suspended. And we recognize, if only for an instant, that the seeker and the sought are one. That the world we've been searching for has never been separate from us. That what we are is what we seek. This is the game, to hide from ourselves so completely that when we find ourselves again, the recognition brings unspeakable joy. We've been exploring this fascinating insight that the world you experience isn't something separate from you, but rather something that arises within you. Now, I'd like to examine more closely this apparent division between subject and object, between the perceiver and the perceived. In our ordinary way of thinking, we imagine ourselves as subjects, conscious beings who perceive objects, trees, mountains, other people, thoughts, feelings. The subject is in here, and the objects are out there, or perhaps in here, in the case of thoughts. But either way, there seems to be a fundamental duality, the one who experiences and that which is experienced. But is this really the case? Let's look more carefully. When you see a tree, there is seeing. But are there really two things, you and the tree? Or is there just one process called seeing the tree? You can't separate the seer from the seen any more than you can separate the front of a coin from its back. Consider, have you ever experienced yourself, the subject, apart from some object of experience? Can you be conscious without being conscious of something? And conversely, can any object of your experience exist for you apart from your awareness of it? What we call subject and object are actually two poles of a single process, like the north and south poles of a magnet. They appear to be separate, but they're aspects of one reality. The Taoist tradition captures this beautifully in the symbol of the Tao-Te circle divided into yin and yang. Each side contains a spot of the other, and together they form a dynamic whole. So it is with you and your world. They appear to be separate, but they're actually one process, one reality, one expression of being. This isn't mere philosophy, it's a description of your direct experience when you look without preconceptions. The subject-object division is a conceptual overlay, a useful fiction perhaps, but not the fundamental truth of your moment-to-moment living. In the words of the Heart Sutra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. The perceiver and the perceived arise together, define each other, exist only in relationship. They are not two things, but one event. The dance of subject and object is a dance with only one dancer. Now, when I suggest that the world arises within you, that it's more like a dream than something solidly out there, people often misunderstand. They think I'm suggesting that the world is an illusion in the sense of being unreal or unimportant. But that's not it at all. When I compare the world to a dream, I'm not diminishing it, I'm elevating our understanding of dreams. After all, while you're dreaming, the dream doesn't feel like just a dream. It feels completely real. The emotions are real. The experiences are real. It's only upon waking that you say, "Oh, that was just a dream." But consider, how do you know that this isn't also a dream? A more consistent dream, perhaps. A collective dream that we all seem to share. But a dream nonetheless. The Chinese philosopher Chuang Tzu told a wonderful story about this. He dreamt he was a butterfly, flitting about, happy and content. But when he awoke, he didn't know if he was Chuang Tzu, who had dreamt he was a butterfly, or a butterfly now dreaming it was Chuang Tzu. You see, our certainty about what is real and what is dream comes from contrast. The waking state seems more real because it's more consistent than the dream state. But this doesn't mean it's fundamentally different in kind. The yogic traditions of India speak of different states of consciousness: waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and turiya, or pure awareness. From the perspective of turiya, the waking state is just as much a dream as the dream state. Both are manifestations of consciousness, neither more real than the other. This isn't to say that the world is unimportant or that your actions don't matter. Quite the contrary. It's to recognize that this world, like a dream, is fluid, creative, responsive to consciousness in ways we've scarcely begun to understand. So perhaps it's not that life is a dream, but rather that dreams are a form of life. Both are real, both matter, Both are expressions of consciousness exploring its own infinite possibilities. I've been suggesting that the world you experience exists within your consciousness. But this doesn't mean you're alone in some solipsistic universe. Far from it. For what arises within your consciousness includes other beings, other centers of awareness that mirror and reflect your own. This brings us to one of the most fascinating aspects of perception, relationship. For it's in relationship with others that we discover ourselves most profoundly. Think of it this way. You never see your own face directly. You see it only in reflection in mirrors or in the responses of others. And so it is with your deeper self. You discover who you are largely through your interactions with others. The people in your life are like mirrors, reflecting back aspects of yourself that you might not otherwise recognize. The qualities you admire in others are qualities you possess, perhaps latently. The traits that irritate you in others often point to disowned aspects of yourself. As the Hindu greeting Namaste expresses, the divine in me recognizes and honors the divine in you. We see ourselves in others and others in ourselves. But there's an even deeper truth here. Not only do others reflect you to yourself, but in a very real sense they exist within your consciousness. The other, as you experience them not as they might exist independently, but as they are for you, is an aspect of your own awareness. This doesn't diminish others or deny their independent existence. Rather, it highlights the profound intimacy of all relationship. Others are not separate from you, they are involved in you, just as you are involved in them. Martin Buber, the Jewish philosopher, expressed this beautifully in his distinction between it and I, thou relationships. In an it relationship, you treat the other as an object, separate from yourself. But in an I-thou encounter, the boundaries dissolve, and you recognize the other as an extension of yourself, not as something you possess, but as something you participate in. This is why love is so transformative. In love, you recognize that the beloved is not separate from you. As the poet Rumi put it, lovers don't finally meet somewhere. They're in each other all along. So you see, when I say the world exists within you, I'm not reducing it to something small or personal. I'm expanding what you means to include all that you experience, all that you love, all that you are in relationship with. The world within is vastly larger than the ego that claims to contain it. Now, all this talk about the world existing within consciousness might seem very abstract and philosophical. But I want to assure you that it's actually intensely practical. For if the world you experience is shaped by your consciousness, then transforming your consciousness transforms your world. And the most powerful way to transform consciousness is to go beyond thought altogether. You see, thought is a wonderful tool, but a terrible master. When we mistake our thoughts about reality for reality itself, we imprison ourselves in concepts. We become like the man who, having studied restaurant menus extensively, believes he understands food without ever having tasted a single dish. Thought creates a veil between you and direct experience. It interprets, categorizes, judges, compares, and in doing so, it distances you from the immediacy of what is. It turns the living reality into a conceptual map. And as Alfred Korzybski wisely noted, the map is not the territory. This is why meditation is not just a spiritual luxury, but a practical necessity if you wish to perceive clearly. In deep meditation, thought subsides, and what remains is pure awareness consciousness without content, the knower without anything specific being known. And in this state of pure awareness, something remarkable happens. The boundary between perceiver and perceived, between subject and object, dissolves. What remains is just perceiving, just experiencing, without a separate someone who experiences. The Zen Buddhists call this no mind or no thought. It's not a blank or unconscious state, but rather consciousness freed from the limitations of conceptual thinking. It's consciousness that has stopped fragmenting reality into pieces and simply rests in the wholeness of what is. From this perspective, it becomes absolutely clear that the world is not something separate from you. The world, as you know it, with all its beauty and tragedy, its pleasure and pain, is an expression of consciousness. Your consciousness, not the personal me with its particular history and desires, but the deeper consciousness that this personal self arises within. As the barriers of thought dissolve, you don't just think about this truth, you directly experience it. And this experience, this recognition, is what the great traditions have called enlightenment, satori, moksha, discovery that what you are, most fundamentally, is the awareness in which the entire world appears. Throughout our exploration, we've been circling around a profound truth that the world you experience exists within your consciousness. But there's a final step to take, and it's perhaps the most revolutionary of all. What if what you call your consciousness isn't really yours at all? What if it's not something you possess, but rather something you are? And what if this consciousness isn't separate or different from the consciousness in all other beings? The great wisdom traditions suggest that beneath our apparent differences, beneath the separate selves we appear to be there, is one consciousness, one awareness that manifests as the many. Like a single actor playing many roles, or a single light shining through many windows, this one consciousness appears as the multiplicity of beings. The Upanishads express this in the magnificent phrase, Tat Tvam Asi, that thou art. The deepest essence of you is identical with the deepest essence of the universe. Not similar, not connected, but the same. In the West, we've been taught to think of ourselves as isolated fragments, separate egos encased in bodies. But this is a profoundly limited view. It's like identifying with a single wave and forgetting the ocean, or identifying with a single note and missing the symphony. What you truly are is not the limited self you've been taught to identify with. What you are is the awareness in which all experience arises. Not your personal awareness, but awareness itself, the ground of all being, the source of all manifestation. And this isn't something you need to achieve or become. It's what you already are, beneath the layers of conditioning and mistaken identity. It's your original face before you were born, as the Zen masters say. When you recognize this not intellectually, but as a lived reality, something extraordinary happens. The search ends, the struggle ceases. You realize that what you've been seeking has been here all along. As T.S. Eliot beautifully put it, we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. This is the ultimate homecoming, the recognition that you are already home. That the peace, fulfillment, and wholeness you've been seeking in the world out there is actually the very nature of what you are. So when I say that the world is not outside but within you, I'm inviting you to a radical shift in identity from the separate self that perceives the world to the awareness in which both self and world arise. From the wave to the ocean, from the limited to the limitless. And perhaps most wonderful of all, this shift doesn't require you to leave your ordinary life. It doesn't demand that you withdraw to a monastery or sit in meditation for years. It simply invites you to see the life you're already living from a new perspective, to recognize that the ordinary world of your everyday experience is in fact extraordinary beyond measure. That what appears most common is actually most sacred. That you are already, right now, exactly what you've been seeking. As we come to the close of our exploration, I invite you to pause for a moment, to set aside all theories and concepts, including everything I've shared with you today, and to simply notice your direct experience here and now. Notice that everything you're aware of, thoughts, feelings, sensations, perceptions, appearing within your consciousness. the sound of my voice, the feeling of your body, any thoughts arising about what I'm saying, all of this is your experience, your consciousness in action. And notice that this consciousness, this awareness that you are, has no boundaries, no edges. It has no size or shape. It's not located anywhere in particular. It's simply here, present, aware. This boundless awareness is what you truly are. Not the limited self you've been taught to identify with, but the open, spacious consciousness in which that self and the entire world appear. And in recognizing this, you come home to yourself. You discover that the world you've been seeking is not separate from you. It's an expression of you, a manifestation of the same consciousness that you are. So remember, the world is not outside, but within you. Not within you as a person, but within you as consciousness itself. And in this recognition lies freedom, peace, and the end of seeking. For as the great sage Ramana Maharshi said, when asked where liberation is to be found, liberation is not somewhere else to be reached. It is simply giving up the idea that you are in bondage. You are already free. You are already home. You are already what you seek. And the world you experience is not separate from you, but a reflection of the infinite consciousness that you are.
You see, we spend most of our lives trying to get somewhere else. We believe, quite fervently, that where we are is never enough, that we are somehow behind, that we must race towards some imagined destination of success, fulfillment, happiness. And so we fret, we panic, we grind, we rush. But what if I told you that all along you've been walking, quietly, unconsciously, into the very life you once begged the stars for, not by force, not by stress, but by the silent rhythm of being itself? What if your only job now is to relax, relax, because there is a great misunderstanding we've inherited? We've been conditioned to believe that life is a climb, a struggle, a mountain to conquer, that unless we are striving and suffering, we are somehow wasting our time. But this, my friend, is the fundamental illusion. Life is not a race. It is not a problem to be solved or a mountain to be scaled. It is a dance, and like any great dance, it's not about getting somewhere. It's about the movement itself. When you were younger, perhaps you whispered prayers into the dark. You hoped for love. You yearned for freedom. You begged the universe for peace, for purpose, for clarity. And now, without realizing it, you are arriving. But you can't see it because you're still looking for something dramatic, some grand arrival, some overwhelming moment that screams now. This is it. But the life you prayed for doesn't always arrive with trumpets and fireworks. It often arrives in stillness, in quiet mornings, in the peace you once thought was impossible. And yet, you keep asking, am I behind? Am I too late? But behind what? Behind whom? Time is not a straight line with markers and deadlines. It is fluid, cyclical, and deeply personal. You are not late. You are not early. You are right on time. Like the tree that blossoms when the season is right, you too unfold according to your own rhythm. The cherry tree does not compare itself to the oak. It simply flowers when it is ready. You're not meant to have it all figured out. You're not supposed to have mastered every lesson or conquered every fear. You're not behind in any grand scheme. In fact, the idea of being behind is the very thing keeping you from seeing where you already are. You are in the process. You are mid, becoming. You are the prayer unfolding. But the mind wants evidence. It wants assurance. It wants to measure progress. So it looks for signs, for results, for approval from the outside world. And when it cannot find them, it panics. But the truth is, the most important transformations happen underground, unseen, unmeasurable. Like seeds beneath the soil, much of your growth has occurred in silence. Just because it wasn't loud doesn't mean it wasn't real. Relax and trust that life knows what it's doing. You don't need to micromanage the unfolding of your existence. You are not the CEO of the universe. You are not here to control every outcome. You are here to participate in the mystery, to be danced by it. You are a wave on the ocean, not separate, but part of the vast intelligence that is existence itself. And so, when you let go of the need to force and fight, something miraculous happens. You start to notice. You begin to see what is already here, the little things, the way the light filters through your window in the morning, the way your breath rises and falls without you doing a thing, the way love has quietly returned to your life in new forms. You begin to recognize that the life you once prayed for wasn't always about stuff or status. It was about a feeling, a state of being, and now you're learning to feel it. But make no mistake, this doesn't mean you sit back and do nothing. No, life is participatory. You must still move, still engage, still act. But the action arises from presence, not panic. From alignment, not anxiety. When you're rooted in trust, your choices become intuitive, graceful, effortless. You do what needs to be done, but you're not frantic. You're not constantly worried about the result. You've learned that you can trust the process, because the process is you. It's like a river. You can swim with the current or against it. Most of us have spent our lives swimming upstream, trying to reach some imaginary point. But when you relax, when you stop resisting, the river carries you. You begin to glide, you begin to flow, and suddenly you realize you were always meant to arrive, but only by surrendering to the movement itself. And this surrender, this letting go, is not weakness. It is strength of the highest order. It takes courage to trust. It takes courage to release the illusion of control, to stop trying to prove yourself, to stop fighting with life. But once you do, you enter into harmony with the way of things. You begin to sense that life is not happening to you. It's happening through you. Consider this. The very breath you're taking right now was once prayed for by someone struggling to breathe. The quiet you now find boring was once the dream of someone stuck in chaos. The relationships you now take for granted were once the very connections your heart longed for. This moment, this very one, is sacred. But you cannot taste its sweetness if you are always chasing the next thing. So many of us are addicted to the idea of next. The next goal, the next level, the next breakthrough. But life doesn't reward you for constant motion. It rewards you for presence, for awareness, for being awake to the now. The miracle is not in the destination. It's in the unfolding. The prayer is not answered in the future. It's being answered now in real time, often in ways you didn't expect. Perhaps you prayed for peace, but life gave you solitude first. Perhaps you asked for strength, and life gave you struggle to build it. Perhaps you begged for purpose, and life handed you confusion so you could create clarity. The universe doesn't always deliver in the packaging you expect, but it always delivers. Relax, because all the rushing, all the tension, all the trying to get there, none of it will speed up what is already on its way. In fact, it may slow you down. Anxiety clouds your vision. Fear narrows your perception. But calm opens your eyes. Calm lets you see the invisible movements happening beneath the surface. Calm allows you to receive. There is a kind of wisdom that emerges when you finally exhale, when you stop trying to figure it all out, when you admit that you don't know where this is all going, and that's perfectly okay. You are not supposed to know. You are supposed to live, to experience, to learn, to let it all wash over you like waves. Joy, sorrow, love, loss. This is what it means to be alive. The truth is, you never really had to do as much as you thought. Life has been guiding you all along, even in your detours, even in your mistakes, even in your darkest moments. You were still being led. Every chapter had a purpose. Every delay was divine. Every closed door was redirecting you. You don't need to understand the full picture to trust the artist. The masterpiece is still in progress. So look around, really look. Don't wait for your life to be perfect to feel grateful. Don't wait for all the answers to finally feel peace. You are walking into the life you once dreamed of, step by gentle step. It may not look exactly how you imagined, but it is here. It is unfolding, and your only job now is to allow it. Breathe. Feel your feet on the ground. Listen to the silence between sounds. Notice the ordinary miracles. You are not lost. You are not late. You are arriving. Again and again, with each moment, the universe is not behind schedule. You are not a mistake. You are an expression of something far greater, something unspeakable, something timeless. And as you relax, you begin to hear it, the soft whisper beneath all the noise. This is it. You're here. You're becoming. You're living the life you once prayed for. Now open your eyes and see. Because the truth is, peace was never waiting for you at the end of the journey. It was always here, waiting for you to stop running. So relax. You've already arrived. So in the end, the great irony is this. You are never behind, never lost, never forgotten. You are simply unfolding in divine rhythm, much like a flower opens to the sun. Not by will, but by design. All that rushing, all that worrying, all that reaching, it was never necessary, because what you were chasing was never out there. It was within you, growing silently, patiently, inevitably. The life you once prayed for was not some distant prize to be earned through suffering. It was a natural becoming, a path you were always meant to walk. And now here you are, not because you forced it, but because you surrendered to the current. You stopped swimming upstream, you let go, and life in all its quiet wisdom carried you home. So breathe. Trust be here. The answers will come not when you chase them, but when you make peace with not needing them. Let this moment be enough. Let the silence speak. Let life reveal itself in its own time. And above all, relax, for you are not lost, my friend. You are simply arriving.